Peace, power, and prosperity. Peace, power, and prosperity. I told y'all we gonna be back. 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 So I got brother Zahir. I'm gonna let him really introduce himself though, because we got a tendency to say names wrong. Sometimes. Oladuni, uh, Mo. I'm gonna let you say it, brother. But anyway, we back. We back. We back. We heard today we're gonna talk about some somewhat controversial subject to some, somewhat a controversial subject to some. Kwanzaa. I'm gonna give you a little bit of history just real quick, briefly. I come from uh the line of folks that's around here where I live at. That sometimes look anti Kwanzaa. So I had the opportunity to meet Brother Zahir and hear his piece on it. And he sort of educated me on some things, kind of opened me up a little bit. And so I wanted to bring him here so we can talk about Kwanzaa, what it mean, and also just discuss a little bit of the critical subjects on it, the critical topics. You know what I'm saying? The founder of Kwanzaa, whatnot, and all that type of stuff. So we appreciate him, brother. If you can introduce yourself, brother.
My name is Zahir Oladuni Mobilaji Toure. I have a history with this good brother here. We've been working together in these revolutionary streets, holding it down. You know, um, I'm a lot of things, educator, philosopher, writer. I do a lot of different things, especially here in the city of Atlanta. So I'm glad to be here, man, and represent for cultural nationalism because it's always talking down and people don't ever fucking they don't understand what it really is about. So I kind of want to set the record straight, like kind of what Karenga said in one of his essays I'm gonna introduce here. So, we can finally set this record straight, man.
For sure, for sure, for sure. Yeah, let's hey, set the record straight, man. Set the record straight, cause we don't know. I told you we hear so much about Karanga. You know what I mean? I've actually ran into him twice. One time at the
Oh,
Active
really?
Change. Yeah, yeah. One time at the Active Change in Oak Cliff. The second time at Pan African, and then it was the third time at the church. So as far as I know, he been here to speak in Dallas that I'm aware of at least two or three times over the last 20 years. So hey, so but yeah, go ahead and educate us, brother.
All right, so the thing is that like I felt like in order to really understand Kwanzaa, we have to understand its relation to cultural nationalism and cultural nationalism's relation to revolutionary nationalism and how I use these terms. You know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna do a little educational piece, and you could stop me and you could ask questions, or we could have a dialogue, right? But I want to
Okay.
just bring some stuff in here because you can see my screen, right?
Yeah, we see a screen.
Okay, so I don't know if all you guys are familiar with this book, Classical Black Nationalism from American Revolution to Marcus Garvey by Jeremiah Moses. I only bring this book up because this kind of matched my understanding of revolutionary nationalism, right? And so I wanted to bring this up because my thing is like this. Revolutionary nationalism to me, I want to give my definition and a book definition. It always meant the struggle for black people to have their own country, to have their own nation. Whether it was here in the South, like people talk about, or back in Africa. So that was my understanding. And so that was like nationalist part. The revolutionary part was just like we saying we down for armed struggle, we down for whatever it takes to make that thing happen. Right. But it's an entire
Yeah,
process of how we go about and building this entire nation. So when I read this book, I felt like this book had it down completely correct because it says classical black nationalism, which reached its fullest expression in 1850 to 1925 as an effort of African Americans to create a sovereign nation state and formulate an ideological basis for a concept of national culture, right? So we got to understand that is the origin of all of this, what we call national liberation or the liberation struggle. That's what it is right there. So, classical black nationalism's goal of establishing a national homeland in Africa or elsewhere signifies something more than a dissatisfaction with the conditions of America. It indicated a desire for independence and determination to demonstrate the ability of black people to establish a republican form of government. And he goes on to talk about how it's tied in with Pan-Africanism. So this is important because I don't feel like that understanding of what we're doing is no longer here. And I feel like the
Mm,
problem has become that the idea of blacks having their own nation state has been kind of co-opted by like the socialist left. And this is
mm,
all a
mm,
part of
mm,
like the
mm.
like what came out of the Black Panther Party. And I'm gonna get to the whole beef and all of that too. But I wanted to start there, right? Um, Let me bring up this other thing here.
Goddamn Wikipedia.
Oh damn, what happened to my stuff? There it goes. Okay. So when we talk about national liberation and what our goals are and what we're trying to do, and what I just said, I said, when we think about the struggle for national liberation, historically, what happened was you had capitalism, the Europeans, they kind of took over the world through capitalism and imperialism. And so what you had was the third world, what they called third world back then. They call it global south now. This is where like countries that were on the receiving end of colonialism, they thought, how do we respond back to this? And so they looked at socialism as the way to do that. But you have to understand this concept of revolutionary nationalism isn't just socialism. And this is a major problem that we have because this is why I brought this definition up, like left-wing nationalism. And this is just on Wikipedia, but I'm gonna explain it, right? So they talk about left-wing nationalism or popular nationalism by those who do not adhere to left-right plane, meaning they don't see themselves as like left and right, Democrat or Republican in the American sense. Um, but they base their ideas of nationalism on national self-determination and popular sovereignty, right? And left-wing political positions such as social equality. Left-wing nationalism can also include anti-imperialism and national liberation movements. So this is what we viewed ourselves as a national liberation movement. Black people, right, are this particular nation that we're trying to liberate, right? What is liberation? A separate black nation. Not just liberation from a form of social inequality, but literally we're trying to form our own black nation of our own for the purposes of self-determination, for the purposes of self-government, right? But what I'm trying to explain here is that over time, what happened was our ideas got united with socialism on the basis of challenging the world dominance of capitalism and imperialism. Right. So this is
Mm.
where the where we start to intertwine. And you get concepts like even African socialism, the Ujama villages and so on and so forth and all of this other stuff. Right. But you could even when I say revolutionary nationalist, like the thing is you could tell who's more socialist and who's more nationalist. Who's more about
Okay.
black self-determination, who's more about the socialist end goal, which is the stateless and classless society, right? And you could really see who's who by asking their opinion on Marcus Garvey, because
Mm.
Marcus Garvey did what he did without white folks.
So if you ask them about W.B. Du Bois, they gonna so if they incline to be on the socialist end, then they probably are gonna agree a little bit more with W.B. Du Bois. Correct me if I'm wrong with that. Is that what you're stating?
Ain't no probably in it.
Okay.
Ain't no probably in it.
Right.
Yeah, see, because a lot of these folks they're gonna call Marcus Garvey out. They might call him reactionary nationalist, blase, blase, blase. But for those of us who just wanted a national liberation again, who wanted black people just to have self-determination, right? They're gonna be pro Garvey because Garvey is he represents the soul of that nationalist sentiment. Now, this doesn't mean that we have to have a beef between Garvey and Du Bois, right? But this represents a split in how we're viewing each other and how we're viewing these figures, how we're viewing the split between Garvey and Du Bois. Does that make sense? Because
Right.
some people gonna be like, well, maybe we can understand Garvey's position on, maybe grassroots struggles, but we don't like his position on race and all this other stuff. Versus, we understand Du Bois's criticisms against capitalism and his cooperatives, but we're gonna see that through institutional building through the Garveyite lens. You see what I'm saying? And that
Right.
makes a huge difference, right? So when we're talking about this national liberation struggle, again, which is a struggle for us to bring the masses in, and this concept of in a Marxist sense, we're engaged in a revolution. So what this implies now is that now we're, they call it following the contradictions, right? Now this is like, if America does something bad like gentrification, we're out there in the streets to challenge it. Those are exposing the contradictions. And the logic behind it was, okay, look, we have to understand the contradictions, meaning how capitalism enforces a type of inequality in the people. We focus on those inequalities and we engage in a social struggle against that, hoping that the people are going to kind of wake up and go, yeah, we're new Africans. We don't like this capitalism thing, and we want to take it over and transform America to a socialist economy. And that's sort of the logic with that. Sort of like I look at Black Lives Matter, right? And Black Lives Matter engaged, it really was a various forms of grassroots movements, and they went against the police, but it kind of formed into like a national phenomenon. Like people were like, oh, we love this group. They really captured the spirit for a while, up to the point where they got $90 million. And that's the point that people are trying to reach with that national liberation struggle, is they're trying to get the masses of people to embrace them. And part of that thinking is like, oh, we're gonna follow, police brutality or in any issue that could come up. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's the thinking. Now, with that being said, um, the Panthers deviated from the original plan of national liberation and became more socialist, meaning, hey, look, we understand what you guys are saying about, wanting to have your own country, but we're a little bit more on that socialist side where we think we want to just destroy capitalism and built for socialism, period. All right. Now, this was a deviation that happened. This is not me talking down on them. I'm just saying what happened. And to me, that involved forming alliances with white folks.
Okay.
And so to me, what ends up happening is they get support from the white folks because white folks are now a part of it, you know. And I'm not saying I'm not somebody who doesn't understand the need of forming alliances at times to go against a capitalist threat,
Right.
or if it's strategic for something we got to do. I'm definitely not saying
Right.
that.
Right.
But the Panthers kind of let go of the national liberation struggle as their primary motivation for it. And I think that this is what allowed them to get embraced by white folks more. And so you're going to get more of the movies. You're going to get more of the documentaries. You're going to see them on Netflix. They're going to have a documentary before Organization Us or before Marcus Garvey because their vision involves white folks. And even a whole lot of these Negroes who call themselves revolutionary nationalists today really want to see it integrated and better America through socialism. They want to have they white spouses and they want to belong to the in America versus some of us who say no, we believe in the national independence for blacks who want to be self-determined.
Right.
Okay. Now, I started to notice this as myself. I wasn't always pro culture nationalist, believe it or not. Because when I first got conscious, I read Malcolm X. Right. And that's another
Right.
thing is if you ask people who their heroes are, if one person says Malcolm X, another person may say Fred Hampton, you know which one is for national liberation, which one is not.
Yeah.
Now, with this being said, I, with that being said, I was a person who, even though I first read Malcolm, who I read after Malcolm was the Black Panthers. And so from the Black Panthers, I read a lot of Marxism. And Marxism is not something you just read one day, right? I got a major in political philosophy, bachelor's and all that. So I really love reading political theory. And it's extremely deep stuff. As much as I have disagreements with it now, it really took over my mind at one point in time, and that was my main, um, uh, I want to say, approach or method to struggle. And so when I would engage with the masses of the people, I was engaging with them on the level of following the contradictions and saying, we serve the people, right? We're doing these programs, and I want to get to what programs are. Because what is the work of a revolutionary organization, right? Because when I first joined, it just seemed like all we did was jump on these random activities. It was always a new thing we had to jump on, and then we had to teach the people, whether, like I said, whether it's gentrification. Well, my first protest was raise the minimum wage protest when I was with the Communist Party, and it's like I never really saw these Marxist ideas and ideologies really hit with Black people to this day,
Mm,
right? I've never seen the words like proletariat, bourgeoisie. I've never historical materialism, wage labor. You're exploited because you're a worker, so on. Exploit. I've never seen any of that hit with the people
okay.
to this day. Never. Okay. And I started to get frustrated because what I started to see was a lot of these socialist organizations, when they said, we have the interests of the people, we're serving the people, what they were really saying is we're serving ourselves. We see
Mm,
a contradiction and we're following something that we see. But the people may be like, well, we don't give a fuck of what you're talking about. We may not
right.
care about Cop City. Y'all care about Cop City. We may not necessarily care about raising minimum wage. Y'all care about that. Or whatever it is. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? And I
Right.
was like, oh, so although the idea is to be with the people and engage with the people, and we're supposed to be in unison with them and engage in with struggle. I started to see that no, we think that we're better. It's like we're leading y'all. Yeah, so we have to call ourselves the vanguard because y'all just so behind. And y'all need to learn about this like socialist, rhetoric,
Right.
And I was like, well, what are we supposed to be doing? And I want to present this because I want people who don't know to understand, right? So I went to one of my favorite books here. For those who don't know, um, this is the Notes from African Prisoner of War Journal, Book 5. You can catch this. I think it's on Freedom Archives, right? Um, but this book I thought discussed what we should be doing in terms of programs. Uh, you know, Let me find it real quick. I just had it up. Just a second. Here it is. Okay, so they're talking about the work of a revolutionary organization, right? Like I said, originally from the Marxist, the leftist standpoint, it's following contradictions, and following contradictions could be like any single issue, like gentrification, for example. I know I keep saying gentrification, but it could be anything, right? Police brutality, but this is what they were saying, right? We recognize that in order to bring the people to the level of consciousness where they would seize the time, okay, there's key words here. A level of consciousness, right? Seize the time. Seize the time. What do they mean? Do they mean just socialism? Or do they mean national liberation, right? Consciousness. How do we get there? How do we get the people to understand the need for that, right? It would be necessary to serve their interests in survival by developing programs in which would help them to meet their daily needs. For a long time, we have had such programs not only for survival, but for organizational purposes. Now, we not only have a breakfast program for school children, we have clothing programs, we have health clinics, which provide free medical and dental services. We have programs for prisoners and their families, and we are opening up clothing and shoe factories to provide for more than the needs of the community, right? And then they go on how they did a research program for sickle cell anemia. And then they say all these programs satisfy the deep needs of the community, but they are not solutions to our problems. This is why we call them survival programs, meaning survival pending revolution. Um, so the idea here is to develop programs to raise consciousness and meet the needs of the people simultaneously, right? So we're trying to say we want you to see you guys as a part of a national liberation struggle. We want to see you do this. We want you to see the backwardsness of capitalism and so on and so forth. Another quote they said in here. Let me bring it up here. Uh, we have to understand that the development of class as well as a nationalist consciousness is much more important for us than for other oppressed nations struggling for independence from capitalist imperialist oppression. The black pseudo bourgeoisie, while not fully developed, is firmly attached to the capitalist way. If we want to believe this isn't so, we only have to check our history and the contemporary scene. Sharpen struggle will inevitably sharpen the contradictions too between the masses and those who are incapable and unwilling to break the chains of capitalist existence, even in an independent New Africa. So, in other words, there's a transformation of the individual of class and cultural consciousness to say we're not going to be what America wants us to be, right? Again,
Mm,
the idea was nationalist consciousness, not just class, not just proletariat, but nationalist consciousness. Okay, and it matters because, well, I'll get to that. I'll get to that. So I gotta go to refer to my main guy, Jalal Muti Kim, in his book "We Are On Liberators." Everybody knows my favorite book.
for sure,
So
for
he
sure.
said, so we did a class on it. So
Right.
he's talking about the new African independence movement. Most movement groups in NAM are reactive, issue-oriented groups who are consistently plunging into activity around innumerable issues, usually legal defense issues, which are constantly surfacing in this period, such as free all political prisoners of war, free John Pratt, Sundiata Acoli, so on and so forth. Um, the result is that many of them disappear as rapidly as they appear. What continues is
Mm,
older militant organization, cliques of individuals, social groups of alumni, etc., etc. And he goes on to say, few of these, if any, have ever sat down to work out a program that we just talked about earlier that half a dozen people could carry out over a period over a year in order to build themselves into a viable organization with their own collective identity and specific contributions to the overall independence movement, right? But they rarely take the time to think through a program, even a small revolutionary cadre organization, a clearer conception of purposes the group is trying to achieve, the methods by which the purpose to achieve these programs, and specific step-by-step processes. In this regard, special attention should be given to the program decolonization, right? So programs could be anything, right? It could be
mm,
any way you engage the people based on the needs and the interests of even, I would say, yourself and the people, because we are the people as well. What do you need? Not just what you think the people need, but what do you need yourself? I started
right.
a community workout program. It's me and my wife started a community workout program, and it's gotten a great response. It's just a way, it's a program that we can say, hey, look, let's bring the people in, and we do political education with it. We do, hey, this is what you think of nationalism. I think I put one video out there where we celebrated Garvey Day with it. Okay, so I said that because, like I said earlier, what I started to see was this what I think is issue hopping of the socialists. I think all groups, I think it's not any specific group. Don't think I'm talking about any specific group because I think all groups have forgot this national liberation struggle and they're just engaging in just an innumerable amount of issues for the sake of, because that's what they think this is all about, right? And so if we understand that part of the national liberation struggle was the raising of consciousness, meeting the needs of the people, right? How do we go back to doing this? And for me, what I saw was culture May not be the best way, but it was the best way for me. Because what I saw
Mm-hmm.
was when people were like, well, we don't necessarily care about the Marxist stuff that you're talking about, right? They did respond to things like name changes. They responded to things like emoji Karamu and drum roll, Kwanzaa. They responded to these things. They responded to them like they understood it without having to say it. My wife's a school teacher. She brought a Kwanzaa program at the school, and there was kids from all over the diaspora that were like, "This reminds me of my country back in Suriname. This reminds me of Guyana. This reminds me of my home in Togo, so on and so forth." And we all know Kwanzaa is a Pan-African tradition. So it was like it was really doing the job by itself, right? But I'm gonna get to that because before I get to there, one of the things I want to break down, like I said, is the relationship of cultural nationalism to the national liberation struggle. It's revolutionary nationalism. So we're gonna go to Mr. Maulana Karenga. Now this is an
Okay.
article that Karenga wrote here. Um, Kawaida, Culture, Nationalism, and Struggle, setting the revolutionary record straight, which is what we're doing right now. Um, First thing I want to bring up, let me look at my notes here. First thing I want to bring up is um okay. He writes, also following Malcolm, we linked the love of nationalism with the love of revolution and argued his position that if you love revolution, you love black nationalism. Thus, by definition, a revolutionary is a black nationalist, right? A real black nationalist are those who love and struggle to liberate their nation. Okay, now again, we view ourselves as a nation. I forgot to say a nation within a nation. We view ourselves as a group of people who can be self-determined, who can have self-governance, who should have our own, right? So that's what he's talking about. And this is important to liberate their nation. Their people are revolutionaries.
Right.
Okay. So there isn't a distinction between cultural nationalism and revolutionary nationalism, right? Thus, as revolutionaries and cultural nationalists responding to the demands of history and the liberation struggle, we said in the 60s, nationalism today, by its very nature, has to be revolutionary if it is for liberation. Moreover, we of us, not united slaves, maintain that cultural grounding and cultural revolution are indispensable for culture provides the basis for revolution and recovery. Here we define culture in its most inclusive sense as a totality of thought and practice by which a people creates itself, celebrates, sustains, and develops itself and introduces itself to history and humanity. Right? Given this, we advance the proposition that culture is the basis for all ideas, images, and actions, and thus to move is to move culturally and by the set of values given to you by your culture. And therefore, we agreed with Sekou Toure and Amilcar Cabral, right? Weapon of Theory, National Liberation and Culture. Those are footnotes. You guys can Google that. Who contended that the national liberation struggle is an expression and act of culture. For the process and practice of revolution or liberation presupposes and requires a culture of struggle which demands it, prepares, aids, and sustains it, and brings it to a successful conclusion.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing. What does that mean? That what he's saying here is that culture, how we think, we have to think differently than being an American. This is difficult. We have to what is it? Du Bois double consciousness. We look at what's the dude's name? Dang, I forget it. James Baldwin, right? To be African in America, to be African without the memory and American without the privilege. All of these things, we're caught in this dichotomy of being African and American. What cultural nationalism is saying is you're African, but African means fuck America because we want our own. You see what I'm saying? Cultural nationalism is stating you have to develop a consciousness within Black people, our thoughts and our practices, our worldview, our virtues, the way we act, the way we think, the way we perceive things has to be different than the suppressor. And you have to no longer identify with America to get this done. Because if you're identifying with America, how can you want to separate and create your own? You don't. You
Right.
want to make America better. So culture nationalism is a method of transforming ideas and practices of the people to get them to see themselves for themselves, right? Either a nation with the nation or even see Africa instead of America as your homeland. And that's incredibly hard to do nowadays because Negroes is ADOS. They ain't trying to hear this Pan-African stuff. And that even that calling yourself an American descendant of slaves, you're situating yourself here to say, our ancestors built this land, so we're just gonna go ahead and stay here. We built this, this is ours. So in a way, America is us. We are American.
Right.
You starting off. I think Dr. Clark said you start yourself off at slavery. You're cutting
That's
off
slavery.
all of this history.
Right.
So culture nationalism is saying, well, wait a minute, use your culture and heritage to uplift your consciousness because we have to have a shift in consciousness. Remember, programs were created to shift the consciousness and meet the needs of the people.
Right.
Shift the consciousness. We have to shift the consciousness with culture.
Right.
Um, let me go on here. Um, we were anti-capitalists, advocating for African socialism, defined in part by Mwalimu Nyerere concept of Ujamaa. Again, I'm just trying to point to the fact that he's saying we are part of this revolutionary nationalist movement, which again, remember I said left-wing nationalism. We didn't want to be capitalist. We wanted to have a separate economy. Our economy is going to be based off of our own, though. Our own concept of Ujamaa villages, not necessarily, what Marx and those guys are talking about. And why is that distinction important? Because we have to view ourselves for ourselves. Again, going back to this dichotomy, are you a little bit more Garvey? Are you a little bit more Malcolm? Are you a little bit more Du Boisian? Are you a little bit more, all these other guys? You know what I'm saying? Which one are
Right.
you, which one? So this is where that goes into when we talk about African socialism, he's talking about Ujamaa, right? And he's talking about the activities. This is of Organization Us, which I'm using as a, broad for all cultural nationalists, which Amiri Baraka, Black Arts Movement, and all the great things they did in, I think it was New Jersey. We taught and practiced
Yeah.
draft
Knew it.
resistance, Newark, that's right, Newark. Yep. We thought and practiced draft resistance, cooperatively organized and held anti-war rallies, teachings against imperialist wars in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, and supported the right of self-determination for all peoples. We advocated for reparations of prisoners of rights, changing Kasisi chaplains to counsel and advise prisoners, and provided literature and lawyers where possible. We supported African liberation movements and Pan-African projects and built alliances with various third world organizations engaging in struggles that gave rise and defined the times. So again, I want to read this part. Realizing that other liberation movements that we have to build and sustain the people as we fight, we committed ourselves to work, service, struggle, and institution building. Thus, we established numerous organizing initiatives and worked in cooperative projects to build institutions to provide affordable housing, accessible healthcare, quality education, end police abuse, establish economic cooperatives, increase political participation, and expand space for cultural ground and creativity performance. So all of this, I'm arguing right now, is this an extension of the concept of national liberation? There isn't a such thing as, oh, that's culture nationalism. They're just over there thinking that they're gonna integrate. They just want to wear dashikis. That's all. They just want to wear dashikis. They don't want to challenge the system at all. That's not what it's about. There isn't a such thing as revolutionary culture nationalism. Culture nationalism is revolutionary. There isn't a distinction, folks. And this is straight from the horse's mouth, right? I want to go over here to my next little. This is another essay written by Karenga called Us Culture Struggle, Ultimately Engaged and Achieved on the Ground. Um, uh, I don't want to read too much because I know I've been reading a lot. But working within our development philosophy for Kawaida, we also took seriously Sekou Toure's call for full re-Africanization and his concept of the indivisibility of African freedom, resistance, and liberation as acts of culture, and liberation as freeing the mind and life as well as land. And from France Fanon, we took the challenge to discover our generational mission and fulfill it in the struggle to start a new history of humankind and set foot a new man or woman in the world. And this too we learned as vital lesson from Malcolm, Toure, and Fanon that we must practice a deep-rooted self-determination, reach inside ourselves, think new thoughts, and struggle to produce new ways of understanding and asserting ourselves in the world. Um, and I just wanted to read that again because that concept of re-Africanization here, that's what that meant. So re-Africanization wasn't just it's in one sense it is behavior, right? In one sense, it is dreadlocks and dashikis. But dreadlocks and dashikis are the outward appearance of what an internal transformation to say, I'm proud of myself as an African, and I no longer view
Right,
myself as an American in that way. All right, so that's
right.
why I wanted to bring that up. Okay. I'm gonna speed this up a little bit here. I'm gonna go ahead and end this here by saying, let me see. Kawita culture nationalism in its liberational and revolutionary thrust is based on three interrelated and interlocking positions. First, the defining feature of a people is culture. Okay, thoughts, totality, thoughts and practice. Second, for a people to be itself and free itself, it must be self-conscious. Again, we're talking about a consciousness, self-determining and rooted in its own culture. And third, the quality of life of people and the success of its liberation to struggle depends upon its waging cultural revolution within and political revolution without, resulting in a radical transformation of self and society and the world. Again, if we don't put ourselves first, if we don't look at ourselves and we're thinking as with everybody else, we're gonna put everybody else struggle before our own. And one of the things I wanted to say was I didn't really become a pro Karanga fan until really I started working with like the Republic of New Africa and New Africans, right? And they kind of because my thinking was we just need to go back to Ghana and Ghana needs to be the state where all Africans across the world can go to and build up. It'd be like a black version of China. And and we could kind of because globally all African people are demonized. You know what I'm saying? It ain't just Black America that's demonized. You know what I'm saying? Like, and even if we have internal fights, around the world, Africa is going to be looked at as the worst of the worst, the bottom of the barrel. You see what I'm saying?
Mm,
So I felt like
mm,
we all need to unify, across for the super state. At the time I viewed Ghana as that in the history and the tradition of even Du Bois and Kwame Nkrumah. And I said, let's push that. But New Africans allowed me to kind of appreciate the new African lineage a little bit more. But what they did was they weaponized our own history against America rather than allowing America to weaponize our history against us. And what I mean
mm.
by that is like you'll hear like, we all might go to school, and they might teach us like, George Washington Carver, and there's nothing wrong with him, but they might teach us heroes that promote America. You know what I'm saying? The first black such and such was accepted, da 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 da. You know, but instead of saying the first black was accepted by them, we start to appreciate our own heritage to say, well, this is if we have George Washington Carver and he's a genius in agriculture, that means we have an ability to be self-determining, right? That means we don't have to depend on y'all.
Right.
Well, growing up, I hear people make all of these jokes about, oh, black folks can't do no playing. You watch that movie Soul Plane, black folks can't run shit. We need the white man and all that stupid shit. But it's like if we look at our history, we have an ability to do that, and that's what I really took from New African culture, and that was like my introduction to Karanga and culture nationalism. So Kwanzaa, right? I wanted to say Kwanzaa itself is a program. Again, a program raises consciousness and meets the needs of the people. Again, when I was out there in the community, I saw people respond to cultural programs more than I saw Marxist programs. Kwanzaa is one of those programs. Kwanzaa uplifts the consciousness of us as African people. And it's a Pan-African holiday that connects us to the continent, right? That doesn't mean everybody's going to run around and call themselves an African tomorrow. But it's a program that we could use not to be ahead of the people, but to be in concert with them. Because I'm doing a Kwanzaa event this year in my little hometown, Covington, Georgia, and I'll tell you, I went to this historical black church here, and I pitched my idea to them about Kwanzaa, and I'm thinking I had to give my best pitch to them. I was thinking like this is why Kwanzaa is great, and they all just looked at me like we already wanted to celebrate it. We just wanted someone to bring us the idea, So people were
Right.
already open and embracing it. We don't have to force it on there. This is where we can have integrity with ourselves. We don't have to force something. It's a program for us to uplift this consciousness towards national liberation struggle and meet their needs because that means it's a need. Every need is not necessarily material in a sense of food, clothes, or shelter. Some needs are desire. You have a need for culture. You have a need for belonging. You have a need for community. This is what culture nationalism can bring as a part of that revolutionary struggle instead of allowing religious institutions to do that. So this is the background of Kwanzaa and culture nationalism. So I wanted to address real quick. I don't know if you have any questions there, but I wanted to address where the Karanga was an agent real quick.
Please, please, hey, I want to tell you that I've been hearing this for years and years and years and years, and now I've heard both sides of it, but please enlighten us so that we can be firm in perspective.
So this is my thing. When I was a kid, I was told by elders in the conscious community, they always used to say, don't believe what I'm telling you. I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm here to teach you how to think. Now they were full of shit because they want to teach you how to think, but or what to think, but I'm here to teach you how to think, right? So when somebody said Karanga was an agent, I automatically believed it. But somebody challenged me one time and said, you need to go prove it, right? So I was like, okay, and I'm just gonna skip to the end here. If you could see my screen, I'm gonna go to the FBI website. This is the website of the FBI. Because what I want to do is I want to prove something to you guys, right? I want to show you how the FBI targeted Karanga and Organization Us. Because if the FBI targeted Karanga, how is he an agent? That doesn't make any sense to me. Why,
Okay,
you know what I'm saying? You're
okay.
not going to attack your own. And I want to show people how the FBI
Could
itself
could it could it
orchestrated.
could could let me play a little bit of devil advocate. Let me just play a little advocate. Could it
Okay.
at one time be co-opted? Could it be co-opted?
What do you mean?
Um, maybe they had something on them for one reason or another, and they said, "Here, this is what we got on you,"
Oh, I see
and
what you're saying. Like they flipped them.
there you go.
From the evidence I see, that wasn't the case. They were trying to destroy all of the organizations that they considered black extremists. They didn't
Okay,
say they didn't say the Panthers were extreme, and the group over there that wears dashikis, they're not a threat. We don't really
okay,
care.
okay, okay,
That's my
okay.
reasoning. So when I go to the FBI website,
Uh-huh.
now this is what in college they call primary sources. So if you go to school, I'm teaching you how to pass a class because you got to
There you
use
go.
primary sources. There's secondary sources, but I'm teaching you primary. So you go
Okay.
and you look. This is the counterintelligence program. We all know COINTELPRO, right? Right. They say this is right here on the website to disrupt the activities of the Communist Party, right, in the 1960s, right? Socialist Workers Party and Black Panther Party, right? They're telling you. So they labeled these groups Black identity extremists. All right. So here is literally the COINTELPRO papers right in front of your face. All you got to do is Google it and look it up. Right? So in the interest of time here, I already looked up the spaces where they mention Karenga's name, and Karenga Organization Us is along with the Student Nonviolent Coordination Committee, Kwame Toure, the whole cast. Everybody's in these documents, right? I want to focus on this one. Right now, this is the document number. You can look it up right here,
Okay.
right? All of that, right? Um, and this is part seven. So that's what you would look up. I'm gonna go back here. Part seven. The Los Angeles office is currently this is an FBI document, y'all. Okay. The Los Angeles office is currently preparing an anonymous letter for bureau approval, which will be sent to the Los Angeles Black Panther Party, supposedly from a member of the US organization, in which it will be stated that the youth group of the US organization is aware of the Black Panther Party's contract to kill Ron Karenga, leader of US. And they, us members, in retaliation, have made plans to ambush leaders of the Black Panther Party in Los Angeles. It is hoped this counterintelligence measure will result in an us and Black Panther Party vendetta. Nigga, this 1968. This 1968. They said they want to create a vendetta with the Black Panther Party and Organization Us. That's 1968, right? I'm doing the math right now. Look at that. Look at that, nigga. 57 years later, niggas is still running around calling Karanga an agent. You doing the job of the FBI. 60 years later, you allowing this document to still remain true in our movements. While you'll sit there and say you anti-FBI, while you'll sit there and say we need to have unity and we need to call out, you're doing the job of the FBI because they literally created letters, falsified documents to create a beef between Organization Us and the Black Panther Party. This is Geronimo Pratt, last man standing, tragedy child Geronimo Pratt, the leader of the Los Angeles chapter of the Black Panther Party security. We got anonymous phone calls, letters, insult, taunts. We found hate mail in our lockers at school. Your girlfriend fucks Karina. You got a phone call. I just left us headquarters. Your wife panties are on the wall. I don't know what the FBI was on back then. Of course, it was some bullshit, but after the third or fourth report, you began to wonder. We found out later that not United Slaves, I don't know why he said that, but us, we're hearing the same things about us. Right after New Year's 1969, the situation turned real bad. Kerrang and us were trying to control the Black Studies program, UCLA, and Butchie and John Huggins were arguing that the issue should be settled by a vote. It was honest disagreement, like college kids have all the time. There was a campus rally the night of January 16th. Fist fight broke out. You couldn't hear the speaker over the booths, right? Um, in the last months of 1969, the intestine warfare with the United with us organization seemed to subside. The fratricidal crap only lasted for 4 or 5 months. Ron Karenga, us Panthers, we finally wised up and stopped fighting. We were pretty sure that the nasty letters and phone calls were where they were coming from. We were stupid for a while, but we weren't stupid forever, right? Again, this is what he was talking about. The Los Angeles Clinton Prophets memoed Washington that its members were currently preparing an honest letter to the Bureau of Approval, which would be sent to Los Angeles. This is what he's talking about, to kill Ron Karenga. So this is the leader of us, and us members in retaliation have made plans to ambush 2 months later. Da 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 da. So what ends up happening is that the FBI played the organization us against the Panthers, right? But they were targeting both groups. They weren't just targeting the Panthers while using Karenga. That's my big point with all of that is that they were saying we wanted to create these vendettas between the groups, right? And I want to give some more letters here. Um, which document is this? Part 13, page 24. Oh, that's not it. Right here. Right? Again, um, they're talking about distributing three cartoons containing characters of Black Panther officials and Ron Karenga, US leader, which cartoons belittle the Panthers and are designed to further differences between the Black Panther Party and us, two black extremist organizations, right? These cartoons are a sequel to five cartoons which deal with the same subject matter, were previously mailed anonymously with Bureau authority. San Diego has reported outstanding results through the initial mailing. um, and so they went on to say how they wanted to go ahead and make sure that the letters got there. So what are our standing results? Beef between these groups, in-house fighting. And my whole thing to me is just that like they call Ron Karenga an extremist, right? And they sent letters to create a beef to neutralize one of the two or both parties. To me, that would mean Karenga is not in cahoots with him. It would be in these documents, and they wouldn't be trying to take him out with the Panthers. At least that's my thinking. What do you think about that?
I think, um, I think that's the biggest thing is, I guess when you look at John and Bunch of Carter, I guess what happened, at the UCLA campus is a big thing. Now, it's one thing, fist fights and disagreements, but I guess when you actually have the loss of life that took place between those two individuals, I think it was January 17th, 1969 on UCLA campus. I think that's a whole entire thing altogether. Um, where the Steiner brothers, and interestingly enough, oh, one of them is on Facebook right now. One of the Steiner brothers, and so I think when you have the loss of life, that's where it reaches a whole different level for folks, particularly if you were around at that time, and particularly if you knew those individuals. I talked to several elder Panthers from Los Angeles that still,
Mm.
have that issue because they knew Bunchy Carter and was very close to Bunchy Carter, and we did a conversation at one time back in the day as Gorilla Mainframe at the time, where we had Bunchy Carter's family. We talked to his family, his niece, and that's people like that, and they still kind of had issue because of the loss of life, and so I just think, um, if it had not been for the loss of life, I think uh, probably a good segment of folks would be more in agreement. But once it escalated to that point, even though those two groups obviously were used against each other, as you kind of shown here, that's basically what you're showing. You're showing that an outside entity saw two groups basically potentially occupying the same space, trying to influence kind of maybe the same group of folks, pitted those two groups against each other. And I think once you just have the loss of life, that sometimes it's hard to to come to rise above that. Now, what I would say is, fortunately, after that situation happened, there was no more loss of life. It didn't turn into an all-out war. It didn't. It wasn't it didn't escalate beyond that. At least to the point to where it's something that we can document as far as the us organization versus the Los Angeles Panthers. That's kind of my perspective on it.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. I wanted to show people a good book that does go over this whole scenario real quick. Oh, that's not it. Um, um, I think it's called Fighting for Us, actually, is what it's called. And we know that the story is that there was every like I want to say kind of a natural just competition, like what what's his name? Geronimo Pratt was saying that there was a natural competition between um um the US organization and the Black Panther Party for self-defense, and this was over the Black Studies program. And recent Watani Steiner, the person you're talking about, you also have to remember, right? Like he had to spend years of exile. Right. Now that's not a loss of life, but that is like he had to leave the country and live outside, in a sense. That's the same thing Assata Shakur had to do. And if we understand that both of these groups were put against each other in terms of like what the FBI was doing, then that's also a result. That's also a tragedy that he had to go through and that family had to go through as well, right? The Steiner brothers. Not to, uh um what's the word I'm looking for? Not to make light of Bunchy Carter and John Huggins' deaths, but it's it is a sensitive issue. But what I'm weighing light to is that he gave his side of the story about I think it was Elaine Brown that he felt was also an instigator of the situation. Right. And they already also had tensions there in terms of just normal competition over a Black Studies program. And this is part of where those of us who are actually in the communities and who actually have done the work, I think we have to understand that we all go through this, right? Like if there's another group in town, it's not like all of us are just getting along and saying, well, we're not going to let the FBI divide us. No, there's always issues. Somebody wants to be the top dog of the city, and I don't need to ask you that. I know you got some stories there. And so, I one of the things I like to do with these stories is I like to look at them as the same way in African spirituality, where you look at deities and their stories and you're supposed to learn from them. These are the people who went through this stuff prior before us. You see what I'm saying? And we can't look at it like the ultimate good versus the ultimate evil. And that dichotomy is what I was trying to dispel by saying, number one, it wasn't like that. Cultural nationalism. Karenga and Hewitt used to go to the same political education program. You
Right.
see what I'm saying? They weren't enemies. So this split I'm trying to point is a split kept coming from the outside and how this outside took advantage of tensions that we were already having in the community. Now it's believed and we all know these groups were heavily infiltrated as well, right? So it's believed that when that shootout happened, it was a series and I'm gonna say it like unfortunate circumstances that them two lost their lives, right, as a result of pent up tension between the groups. But what it wasn't was a hit by organization us against the Panthers on behalf of the FBI. That's what I'm trying to suppress. Not that it's not a problem that both those brothers died, but it's a problem that we all need to recognize that that FBI allowed us to get to this point where we took it there. You see what I'm saying? That's the main issue. And I would say to people carrying on that beef, I have to have two different messages. Again, like to people who is not with the family connected like you are, you have to look at it through evidence and you have to see there and say, are they really agent provocateurs? The answer you have to reach is no. And I think that's our responsibility to make sure that we have our facts straight. And we have to have our responsibility to know who the real enemy is here. Otherwise, we allow them to create these vendettas that create a permanent disruption in our movements, and we can't push forward. And to the family members, it's understandable that they have that beef and that vendetta, but don't misplace that hate to somewhere it doesn't go. You know what I'm saying? It goes towards that FBI. It don't go towards Karanga. It doesn't go towards organization us. You know what I'm saying? And I know that that's hard for people to but I'm just saying that ultimately both groups, as I was shown, were targeted and were put against each other. And we have Geronimo Pratt, who was the leader again of the security exonerating him of those charges. So, this concept that we should keep going with it is
That,
absolutely false. And we have to, if you're scientific socialist, like you say, people say that they are, if you're about information, you have to be able to be wrong. And you have to be able to correct, your misunderstandings. And trust me, some of the Panthers don't know. You're right, because I remember reading, I think it was Life on Death Row from I think it was Mamiya, and they were trying to like figure out what the situation was because it was happening in real time to them. So we have the luxury of looking at original documents and saying, oh, okay, this is what was happening. But a lot of this has already been done. This ain't nothing new. You know what I mean? A lot of people have already exonerated Karenga of all the FBI charges. Just people gotta, stop being dumb.
I don't know, bro. They talk about the meetings with Ronald Reagan. Yeah, of course, they talk about what happened after that in the mid 70s. Um, as far as Karenga's
A lot of times people like to be confirmation bias. You know, um,
yeah,
there was money from white philanthropists, given to the Black Panther Party. You know what I mean? And this isn't a tit for tat, and this is the problem with getting a tit for tat because the
yeah, yeah,
real
yeah,
issue to me isn't did he go see Ronald Reagan. The issue is what is the understanding of these things? Like, what are we doing with this? Why are
yeah.
people doing the things that they do? Right?
Right,
Because from the revolutionary perspective, that's why I started with that. We have to
right,
understand what methods are used to get to where we need to go. You see what I'm
right,
saying? And then like
right.
you might have a different perspective on things. Because what ends up happening is like I don't think, they'll start off like if you're already pro Panthers and you already then you get this idea that cultural nationalism ain't shit and you don't see the purpose of it. It's
Right,
easy to
right.
dismiss it. You see what I'm
You you
saying?
know
And
you,
it
you know what
and
I
what ends up
noticed?
happening. Go ahead.
You know what I noticed though? In agreement to what you're stating, at least from my perspective, there's a lot of folks because I come from that what you describing, and when you like that pro Panther perspective,
Uh-huh.
because those are the people that I was around, right? That was showing me
Yeah.
things. I heard their perspective, and so um, what I notice is that folks that come from that line that usually don't find the value in the culture usually have a hard time having a self identity. That part is often missed. Right there.
That
It's
was the
like,
point of me starting the video off like that because
yeah,
I know that that's what it is. I know that like it's like why do we even need to practice this? It's pork chop culture. No, 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 no. Let's understand how everybody was together. Let's
right,
understand how these things are interrelated. You see what I'm saying?
right,
Then oh,
right.
okay, I see. Because if you think if your perception of culture nationalism is that people are wearing dashikis and they're not challenging the system, it's easy to believe Karenga is an agent.
I think right now, just looking at things now, I think one of the biggest points that folks on the other side of it, they're big on wanting people to assimilate to their perspective, assimilate to their culture, assimilate to their spiritual tradition, uh, assimilate to their political perspective, domestically and internationally. And to me, one of the biggest tools to have is the culture part. At this particular point, culture, I think, is the biggest weapon that we need to wield just because I know we have so much, um, you know, fighting with that. I mean, even looking at, I know some folks may feel a certain kind of way, but just even looking at what's going on in Minnesota now, as far as the Somalians, uh, you know,
Mhm.
a lot of those folks that's over here now aided the United States Army in its efforts at the particular time to, and with the fighting. I think his name was Muhammad Adid. I think if I could got it wrong. But anyway, their perspective is these folks have not assimilated. These folks are still Muslim. These folks are still speaking their language. They may not like baseball. They may not like uh, the Minnesota Vikings. You know what I mean? They are sending money back to Somalia. They're not cycling all their funds in Minneapolis or St. Paul. And so I just think the biggest thing that combats that is the culture. Like, we need culture now more so than ever. It's more evident now. I just think about it. I shared a video just recently with us going against Bear. Bear really, they really don't see. Islam as a threat in the sense of numbers. What they see Islam as a threat is the culture. What they see the African traditional spiritual systems, they see the threat as the culture. That's what they see. That's so that's why I'm inclined after all these years to sort of kind of be in agreement with you because I see the value of it and I see the younger comrades that's coming in now that I kind of deal with that don't have that culture part. All they see is the politics part and they're missing that self identity. So I think that's real
Well,
critical.
and that's the and part of it is that both sides can be co-opted. This is the issue is that like socialism as practiced as a form of social justice activism can be co-opted by a nonprofit industrial complex. It itself can be co-opted. Revolution can be a theme sold by capitalism. So it's not super pure here. You know what I mean? These are intertwined concepts, things that should be taught together. And if culture at a time needs to take the priority in the method of organizing, so be it. Right. It needs to reflect the material conditions. It's like you said, you're on the ground and you're saying you see a need for that. And if people are feeling it, like I've seen people are resonating with this, it should be used on the basis of your material conditions and not on the basis of just because you read Marx or Lenin or something. You know what I mean? Like that. Like it you have to start with your own people and your own culture. Sada Shakur. And she was saying Q in her book, like Huey, people wasn't resonating. They missed the black history. People were like, what is you talking about? Like, why are we not talking about our own people and our own culture? That part is missing. And that's where the culture nationalist part comes in at. I just think that like, it's clear that the reason why people get that message, the socialist message, it's because it involved white folks. It allowed white folks to come in and be a part of our movement, and that's really what it boils down to. That's all that it boils down to is that them white folks gave them niggas money, and that was it. I mean, seriously, it's not
Is
even
that
this
is
big
that, is
thing.
that what is that what it is, man? Come on,
It's
man.
not even
Come on,
anything
man.
else.
Huey,
It's not
look,
all of this FBI bullshit. It's because these niggas involve white people. That's just it.
look,
That's
man.
just it.
Huey and Bobby, man. They was down in Berkeley, man, selling red books, man. They was selling mild books, man. You know, they was over there selling for $1, man. Come on, man. For $1,
Listen,
man.
listen, and they was working and fucking them white folks with. I'm just kidding, but I'm just saying, like them white folks was all a part of their movements, bro. I'm telling you, because it's like, and it's harder to push a kind of one thing I like about cultural nationalism is that it grounds us with ourselves. You know what I mean? To me it responds to the needs of the people a little bit better. But it's just when you say you're fighting because when you say you're fighting against injustice of capitalism and you want to see a better world for a proletariat, right? And you're not saying you want national liberation. You see the difference? Because now we could say, oh, that's a vision for America. Socialism. That's a vision for all of us. Now it's just like, oh, you mean that I can have my white spouse and be in your movement? Great. You see what I'm saying? And it's just and I hate to bring it to make it that trivial, but it really is. You see what I'm saying? We could have an anti-capitalist rhetoric and believe in national liberation. That's what the origins of it is. But I see this split. It's a split, and all you got to do is listen to the ideologies and the things that they say. And I'm saying it on YouTube because I have no official position, like Khalid Muhammad said. I can say what I want to say. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? You look at these positions and it's split. You can see it. Well, we believe in the intersectionality and the blah, 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 all this stuff that comes out of America. They repeat the same rhetoric because you don't think for yourself. You don't know what it means to have your own cultural perspective. So you have to depend on the left of America to inform you. And it's so intertwined. The academia and leftists and all this. It's so alienated from what black people on the ground are going through. You need to have a cultural resistance there to understand who you are and your
Mhm.
values. And guess what? The American left may not like you. They may disagree with you, and that doesn't
Right.
put you on the side of the right. But that's the position that you need to be in where both sides
right,
don't like you. Because if one
right,
side supports you, the other side doesn't,
right,
you're co-opted, whether you know it or not. You're
right,
co-opted.
right, right. We agree. We agree. We agree. Yeah,
You're
yeah,
co-opted. You co-opted.
right.
You throw a meeting, all these white folks show up. That matters still. It matters still. But you get more money though if you push the socialist line. You get more money. You know what I mean? I mean, DSA just had a great victory, good for them, over there in New York. But it's just like, what
But
do
you
we
know what though?
remember?
You know what's so funny though? And I
What's
don't know
that?
if you got a perspective on this. It's just funny you bring that up. Everybody. Well, I don't mean everybody, but folks on the DSA was celebrating my Diamond's victory, right? But
Hmm.
at the same time, Buddy said he wanted to run against Jeffries. I don't know dude's name that want to run against Jeffries. The black man, whatever, or the brother, whatever, want to run against Jeffries. And they kind of pushed him to the side and said, "Now is not the time." You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, how? What you mean? Now is not the time? If you say that Jeffries is bought out by APAC and he doesn't stand for nothing other than what APEC is. And you spend years and years complaining about this relationship, and you get somebody that's affiliated with your group. I'm talking about DSA to particularly run against Jeffries, Hakeem Jeffries, Speaker of the House or Minority Leader, whatever he is, and you mean to tell me you won't support him because you say now is not the time? And so that's to me, that's the one of the biggest problems I feel that's within like the Democratic Party, the Democratic circles, is that they don't they really don't represent the interests of the people, number one, interests of black people, number one, and and they don't seize the time. That's like it's a very weak organization, man. And what's going on now, it doesn't surprise me at all. Just because it doesn't, they don't lack teeth, full of contradiction. Speaking about the Democratic Party, but yeah, I just find it interesting that they won't support the brother, and he's affiliated with their group.
Yeah, he had to
So
he had to
that's
force himself up there. And I know that the mayor, the former mayor of New York, the one who supports Israel, he goes out there and he prays and he cries with them.
kiss the
He
wall,
he was, huh?
go kissing the wall, and all that kind of
Go
stuff.
kissing the wall and all that. They're so co-opted and bought out. They're so disconnected, with the youth and the people. But the Democrats, they to me, they're the half of the wing that stabilizes the political the state, right? The capitalist state, right? So in a sense, their reformist ways, their struggle against the Republicans at times can be legit, in terms of saying, well, we know if Trump and them get in office, we know it's going to be horrible. And it's that kind of trap that is so prominent because then that's what co-ops so much of that energy. And they like to keep it, so much of the energy that say, how can we tip this past that? Right. And so they're used to that. They're used to this comfort zone up there where it's like, we're not going to challenge Israel like that. But then you get this other dude who came out of nowhere and he's got all of these supports and they were trying to push him out. Jeffries, I think it was like not too long ago where he finally endorsed them, and it's like he had to. Now remember, the Republicans were like, "It's the radical left. It's the radical left that they have to, bow down to." I thought it was so funny, but what I do see is the youth at least promoting like a new candidate up there. You know what I mean? That I think at least can represent progress, but ultimately, I think national liberation is still my concern. But that problem we have of like protecting ourselves against Republicans and trying to vote for what do you think of that? What do you think about the voting and voting for like a DSA member?
Man, you know what? We don't have a prominent DSA here in the city of Dallas that I'm aware of.
Yeah,
So I just think from what I can tell about the DSA, it's just a bunch of white left folks that's dissatisfied with the
yeah,
Democratic Party that turn around and do the same thing as a Democratic Party. That's
right.
that's what I see as DSA, just in a nutshell. I don't see I don't see
Like
I
Bernie
don't think
Sanders. pretty much.
Yeah, like a very I don't see a whole lot different. Like it's very it's like the way they handled. Okay, look, check it out, check it out. I mean, it's just like the way how these the Democrats here in the state of Texas, right? And a lot of folks complaining about what the Supreme Court ruling came down yesterday about the Republican Party being able to maintain the map that they drew. Like that started that whole little national thing that all the states are redistricting, right? But the the Democrats here, and I'm talking about in the state house, not on the Congress level, but on the state house, they thought it was smart to leave and go to Chicago or Illinois or whatever, do a press conference with Governor Pritzker, and maybe in some circuit, maybe someone went to California too, but they thought it was smart to do that and just make it like a political stance, like the political theater, and was only gone for like 3 weeks. And I guess somebody told them, "Hey, you know what? We got this case working uh, with the uh, that's gonna go on the federal level, talking about the federal judges, and let's just come back, let's just come on back to Texas and just and wait that situation out." I was of the opinion that if they was really against the redistricting, not that it made a difference per se, because like I said, them people will burn you too. Uh, but I felt like they should have stayed gone just all the way till December and come back. That's
Mm.
what I felt like. If they was really about the stance that they said they was about, they should have stayed gone till December. That's my opinion. Not come back in October and and put it in the hands of the federal judges, which then puts it in the hand of the Supreme Court. You didn't think that Governor Abbott and all these other folks were going to appeal that to the Justice Alito? You knew Justice Alito was the justice over the state of Texas. Y'all already knew this. So y'all
Right.
already seen the play that. So I really think it's just a big show of political theater on the parts of the Democrats. I think the Democrats are the most conniving group of all time just to allow
Mm.
this situation to take place. And also, you're looking at when the government was quote unquote so called closed, how what's his name? What's the majority leader name? The Democratic leader? What's Schumer? How he made that
Yeah.
deal to what with the other Democrats that wasn't up for election this year to go ahead and agree with Trump. You know what I'm saying? And put the great critic that contradiction about the whole is the cost of medicine going to go up? You know what I'm saying? The cost of prescription pills and healthcare and all this sort of kind of thing, just for the benefit of just opening the government back. They didn't want to open the government. They didn't want to keep the government closed any more longer than Trump did. That's basically what I'm trying to say. They got the same interests, is what I'm saying. But
Right.
they act like they don't, and I see the same thing. I feel like the same tendencies with the DSA, the same tendencies with the
Ah,
DSA,
I see.
because you got a valid challenger. It's not like, oh boy, it's like a grassroots organizer coming off the street attempting to challenge Hakeem Jeffries. That's not like that's happening. This guy's already an elected official in New York. He's already on the city council, so he already has name recognition in the area, in the in the place and the location that he's trying to run at. Folks already at least are somewhat familiar with this work because he's already on the city council. So why would you not support him if you state that you're so dissatisfied uh, with Hakeem Jeffries? Because you're not. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just a
Right.
big contradiction. And I look at Madami is the same way. You know what I mean? Madami is the same way. He's already co-opted. The fact that they let him in like that, it shows that he's co-opted. He's not that far different than Eric Adams as much as they let on.
That, one of the things just for those who may not know, like the right and left comes from like the French Revolution, and they had like the how the chambers, they just like how we have chambers, they had
They
a
sat
left
on
and
the
a
left
right.
side. Yeah, they sat on
Right.
the
And
left
and
side.
so like you had the right side that was saying we need to keep the old traditional ways of the monarch in place. And you had the left side that was challenging and saying we want to have a difference. And the reason why I bring that up is because like that's the left and right divide in America is those who are challenging to make a difference and those who want to keep like more of the traditional order, right? And my thing is just that like don't believe too much like the challenge. of the order isn't a rearranging of the order. The challenging is sort of keeping the order in place, but it kind of challenged it to be more progressive. You know what I mean? But it still keeps the order in place. And I see what you mean. Like DSA may look like it's outside of the fringes, but it's really within that left. It's not so much overthrowing the whole thing. It's more like it's still in a place to keep it going, like kind of keep it stable, but give it
Yeah,
new life.
yeah.
Right.
Look,
That's what you're
like
saying.
like
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like your point. You said that Jeffries reluctantly endorsed Madami, right? Reluctantly at the
Right.
very end. You know what I'm saying? But then you look at it,
Hmm.
Madami went to the DSA and told the DSA, "Don't support this guy." His name Ochosi or something, Ochoe or something like that. He told
Uh-huh.
them, "Do not support this guy." I mean, he literally went and told the DSA, "Don't support this guy." You know what I mean? For the benefit of Jeffries. Not that it would have thrown Jeffries in disarray. I'm not saying that. I mean, Jeffries, what you know, probably messing around with what's the guy name everybody keep talking about? He probably was cool with Epstein some kind of way. Ain't no telling. But my yeah, ain't no telling. But my point is that they're not really trying to bring forth the challenge because it seemed like me. I'd want all the revolutionaries, as many revolutionaries or people that would bring about change to be a part, get in the process and shake it up. Not tell one, oh, it's not time right now. You can look at AOC. AOC was a bartender when she ran against the incumbent for her position. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? She wasn't
Hmm.
she wasn't a part of the in crowd of the New York political conversation. As
Yeah.
much as she lets on, but she was a wage worker. You know what I mean? But that's what she used
Right.
towards her benefit, and whatever her language was, that's related to those people. But I really feel like they just it just showed to me, not that the brother that's talking about running was gonna make a big difference. Not saying that, but what I'm saying is, um, it just shows that they're very much so just like the Democratic Party as a whole. You know what I mean? They're not that
Well,
far
see
off from
that
the
the good
Democratic
thing
Party.
about this is like when it see this is why I think this conversation is important because it's like the national liberation struggle shapes how we view these politics, right? It's like how we can promote our agenda through these politics. When we think about ourselves, you know what I'm saying, whether it's DSA or the Republican Party, you know, because using city council agendas or running people for office or even voting for Democrats or whatever, all of that has to be looked at in that viewpoint of this national liberation struggle, which certain people tried to do political parties in the past. I'm not sure how successful they've been, but when we have this analysis, we could sit there and we could say, okay, when we look at ALC, are they really progressive people that we need to put 100% belief in, or do we need to understand their positions and do their positions help our liberation struggle, or are we being co-opted just to support a struggle that has nothing to do with us? You know what I'm saying? I think that's a key that often gets left out the conversation. You know what I'm saying? Because then it's like, what are we doing? And those are the conversations I started thinking to myself, like, why are we supporting these characters? That, because I understand, like, okay, you know, um, they call themselves Democratic Socialists of America, so we have an interest in terms of like socialism, but am I really creating a socialist America? Is that what I want? You see what I'm saying? And that's one of the key things that I started asking myself. So and then on the other scale, it's like I just kind of felt like we got co-opted by these groups because of that. Is that, you know what I'm saying?
we got co-opted, man. We got
I
co-opted,
think
man.
that I think black movements got co-opted by that, man.
I
You know
can
what I'm
I can
saying?
tell you
Because
this.
it's like we got to support these folks, and this is our people, and then because like the differences of like belief systems too started interacting, like when if academia or ALC or any of these people, Bernie. Bernie, supports Israel. You know what I'm saying? That's something that we see as a
Exactly.
contradiction, you know.
Yeah.
But it's like I feel like even understanding ourselves as a national liberation struggle allows us to be a little bit more politically savvy because it's like, you know, Bernie's a bad example because he didn't support reparations. But let's just say if a politician supports reparations, but they supported Israel, maybe we might vote for him on the basis that they support reparations because national liberation comes first. And that's controversial though. But that's something that we can begin to debate because what I'm saying is sometimes even the anti-Israel position starts to out prioritize ourselves. Does that make sense? Yes, we're
Right,
against
right,
Israel.
right, right.
Yeah, we're against that. But what is the priority for us? What is the immediate struggle? You know what I'm saying? What's something that's gonna hold us back? What's something that we want the most? And so
Right.
I that was one of those things, man, because like I feel like, being able to look at Democrats and even Republicans as which one is more beneficial for us and our goals and our strategies is important. Um because we're gonna always be able to call them out and say, you guys are because as soon as you go into that system, you're gonna be like co-opted by the system because you have to make it stay afloat. So it's like I don't want to fall into a place where we're so outside that we can't have any influence on what's going on. But I don't want us to be co-opted either. And I think the only way that we could do that is to maintain a principle of struggle for national liberation.
Mm, mm, mm. I'm
And
with you.
and it's saying
I'm with
something like that, that we may support somebody who and I'm not saying that I'm pro-Israel or anything, but I'm just saying, let's say if somebody was like, well, I support their reparations, but I don't support um um you know Palestine. Yeah, that's a hard question. But to
you.
me,
Right.
it's one of those questions that will say, do you really support this or that? Right. And right now, everybody's going to be like, I can't believe you would even suggest something like that because it goes against the tradition that we believed in for so long now. But what I am saying is that to me, it represents, are you really a little bit more nationalist on the revolutionary side or not? And how we've been co-opted to where you
Right.
can't even think like, you know what I
Right.
mean? Because what's his name? Dr. Clark said we don't have any friends. So, while I will always support a Palestinian liberation struggle because I support all national liberation struggles, right? But I for damn sure are gonna say there's a little bit of anti-black uh elements out there from our Palestinian brothers and sisters, and we need to look out for that. I believe in
Exactly.
black and brown power, but I ain't stupid enough to believe that every brown homie, their family members believe in that. Hell
Hell,
nah. I know that for a
nah,
fact,
nah. Because you look at what's going on. You look at what's going on now. A lot of the ICE agents are Hispanics or Mexicans or whatever. A lot of them are, they use them for that because they know they speak Spanish or whatever. They know the culture. So a lot of those agents are the ones that's out there basically kidnapping people out the streets. And then if you look at what's going on in Palestine, you never see the black folks in Palestine, but you know they're there. And obviously, from reports of people in Palestine, at least from the black ones, that they call them slaves. What's the word they use? I can't think of it.
is it kafir?
They no, it's not that. They call them something. I forget the term they use, but it
Okay.
means slave. It means slave because it's a little piece of candy that looks like a black person or something, or and they say, oh, that's slave candy or
Uh,
something. So yeah, obviously, and that's a whole nother thing within itself. I think we discussed before. What we was talking about Islam, and I know for a lot of us here in the West, you may agree or disagree, but a lot of us here in the West look at Islam has been used as a form of strength because of it's start here, at least for us black folks. But
yeah,
obviously, what slavery ended in Mecca, what 1962, 1963, something like that. Who do you think
right, right,
who you think that who you think was the slaves? You know what I mean?
right.
In Mecca, you know
One
what
of them
I'm saying?
Europeans.
No, it wasn't.
Right,
It
right.
ain't. It ain't. No, it's not no European. It ain't no Asians neither. So,
And
uh,
one of the things too though is I seen Asians, East Indians, and Latin America join mega and not even just mega movements, but also seen them join Nazi movements. Now, at least in both from the Nazis to the mega movements, they get told you're not white, so sooner or later you're gonna have to leave. You got to learn your place. But they
Right,
they end up like assimilating to that culture and taking it out on us. You know what I'm saying?
right,
So I one of the things I do like about national liberation is it we do have that sentiment of saying, wait a minute, let's look out for us. At the same time, at the flip side, I'm a person who promotes all national liberation struggles. So I do support other people. I support Tibet against China, for example. I will support any and all national liberation struggles. They support us, I can support them. But I just think we have to ensure that ourselves and our mission are always prioritized, and we don't believe in the idea before the material reality. And I think that that's the main issue I have with the more socialist rhetoric sometimes is they believe in the utopia. They believe in the principle more than the immediate reality in front of your face. That doesn't always represent that. You know what I mean? And it might be good to have that as we understand capitalism and how it can cause problems, but it shouldn't prioritize like if we're being attacked, like we have to be able to address certain things in the forefront. You know what I'm saying?
right, right,
Hmm.
right. Absolutely,
So you
absolutely.
voting for DSA?
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. To me, they some misfits. They're not even. I know they're here, but they're not. I don't think they're prominent. I don't think they're prominent here. Uh,
Yeah.
they don't. Yeah, man. So I know a couple of guys, and I'm not in saying that I'm not being critical of the guys I know that's participating in. I think they mean well with their participation. But I just think the overall goal of the DSA, for at least what I could tell, and especially how they treated this situation with Mandami and the brother who wants to challenge Hakeem Jeffries, really kind of exposes the contradictions that lies within that organization. That they make the same decisions that the Democratic Party or the Republican Party make, meaning that they like okay. So what I mean by that is this, and I know you may have seen these type of discussions take place, whereas you got candidates
Hmm.
to come sit in the room with a committee of folks or a pack or
Hmm.
whoever, and they're trying to convince the pack or the organization to endorse them, right? Well,
Right.
more times than often, when that pack or that group sits down and meets with those candidates, they really already have the candidate that they're gonna support in mind already. They're gonna
Right.
choose they're gonna choose the candidate not based off the principles or the platform or their personal agreement or their organizational agreement with the platform. They're going to choose a candidate based on who they think actually could potentially win. And oftentimes, that candidate whom actually could potentially win is not necessarily working towards the goal of that group. And I think that's the same type of thought process that you see here to take place with DSA. That they didn't make a choice based upon principle. They didn't make a choice based upon like ideological agreements. They made a choice based off of who could potentially already win the seat and who may be able to in some way, maybe not directly, but maybe Jeffries can support them indirectly, right? In some kind of way. And so I think they made a decision based off of that relationship.
They're gonna always run into a problem. DSA's issue is this boils down to like the basics of socialism, whether socialism is won in an electoral process or through revolution. And when you're dealing with a superpower like America, it's hard to transform them within. You just get swallowed up into the system because it works too well, for them to
That's
totally
it.
transform it in any kind of significant way. So, trying to gain them seats, you're gonna have to end up being strategic. And what strategic ends up being is like realist. And what realist ends up being is like, well, the Democrats are there and they're telling us to do this, so we need to kind of fall in line type shit. So I think that that's always, but you're always going to get like these kind of victories every now and then. But I think ultimately just being swallowed up by the system is like their eventual outcome. But I will say, if it could, if anything, if any of these outcomes can benefit us in any kind of way, I would say, okay, always be on the lookout at how we can make the situation work for us. Um, um, but yeah.
Right, right. So
Okay.
let me ask you. We going I know we gonna have to get this the second portion of this conversation. I know we're going
Mhm.
to get the second portion of this conversation because we gotta get it back the second time. So, just looking at kind of what you gave us a lot of information today to bite and chew on, and really kind of help helped us understanding the value that culture plays into our movement, which oftentimes folks like myself, that my first organization I was part of was United States African Revolutionary Party. That's the first organization I was part of. You know what I mean? Which came out of the was that APRP? You know what I'm saying, right? All African People Revolutionary Party.
All
Yeah,
African People's Revolutionary Party, yeah.
yeah. So I came out of a group that was at one time affiliated with that group. Obviously, Kwame Toure and all those folks, would come back and forth to the city. So those are people. So when I talked about reading W.E.B. Du Bois, I'm talking about myself because I sat in the room and one of the first books I was introduced to was by W.E.B. Du Bois. You know what I mean? And that's what, in comparison to go, versus Garvey or whatever. You know what I mean? So I was reading a lot of Du Bois. You know what I mean? Me and Eric or whatnot. And so that's what we was reading a lot of in a big old room in Dallas and Pan African. So this conversation really challenges for us a lot of the foundation parts that we had. And so I appreciate you for sharing it with me and sharing it for people that will potentially look at this, and hopefully they can ponder on the broader view is that we should not it, it, we should not throw away tools that we could use to fight. I had one elder, Marvin E. Crenshaw, who's a very close comrade of mine, an elder comrade, would say, "Don't give up a tool." You know what I mean? We use every tool that we can to fight, and we need culture. Is one of the biggest tools, if not the biggest, especially because it's going to benefit us directly, not for everybody, but for something that's for us. And so I appreciate you for taking your time out to come share this information. And we wanna you still there? Oh,
No,
okay.
okay, I'm here now. Yeah, I'm
You
here.
took it. Oh, you took you stopped the share. Okay, gotcha. I was like, what happened? So
Well, I was gonna say the
any
AAPRP,
no,
huh?
go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm listening.
I was gonna say the AAPRP, that was my first group too, man. And I don't mean to, I don't want people to think, Du Bois is something we shouldn't read. We definitely should read Du Bois, but it's how we approach it, right? Like what are we getting from these things, right? We should definitely read Huey, and we should definitely read everybody. We should definitely read everybody. But how are we interpreting it depends on our cultural worldview and how we are situating ourselves and what our priorities are. Now, that
Right,
is what I am saying. And that can only come from ourselves, because like one of the things, like I work with this historical black church to put on this Kwanzaa event, one of the things that was stressed that was like the schools are going to teach a form of black history, but how are we teaching black history? And that's only can be done through these events, whether it's Kwanzaa or within the family home. So we have to stress our own story. We have to stress how we're going to present ourselves to the community. And it's just, we have to be able to take these people and say, this is the narrative we're using, period. And we may have to say we don't appreciate certain people as much, you know what I mean? Certain people may not be good for national liberation struggle,
Right,
you know, and it's just what it is. If that's what you truly believe in, if you really believe in cultural autonomy, certain people just may not be good. Some people we may say that's for you guys over there. We don't really appreciate that so much, but we definitely, don't, like you said, don't throw away a tool based off of misinformation. That's my whole thing, especially if you call yourself scientific. Don't like throw away tools, man. Tools are very important. You don't have a lot of tools, and I really want us to start engaging in a more critical analysis of our movements and whether or not even our style of what we're doing is even working. The things that what we're doing is achieving the goals that we put out there. I really would like us to do that more. With this talk of the DSA, we don't agree with the DSA, but they did win an election. Have we won? And part of our national liberation struggle in the past 50 years. What have we won? I think one of the things we could say we won is Chokwe Lumumba. I would consider that a part of our struggle.
right,
But what are ways we can measure ourselves to say we've done A, B, C, and D, and this is what promotes it. This is what leads to the greater struggle. This is something I can do as an individual, and this is something we have done to say we've pushed this thing forward, and we're not just relying on old myths and bullshit.
right, right.
Ashay.
So we gonna get you back the second time, and
I'm always here to talk shit. You know what I'm saying? Hell yeah.
right on. Well, we'll appreciate you. We'll appreciate you very much for sharing that information. I'm gonna try to connect you back at when Kwanzaa's going on because I know you're gonna be pretty. It's gonna be on point at that time. So we're gonna try to share it, of course, with a broader audience. So we appreciate you for giving us this intro. And yeah, man, and this has been powerful.
All right.
Peace,
Peace.
power,
And
and
Pan African.
prosperity.
All right. We should do one on